Hello friends, welcome to a new topic today. This is the continuation of cell injury. In the last class we have learned about irreversible cell injury. Irreversible cell injury can be divided into two types. One, there can be apoptosis. Second, there can be necrosis. So if you see in the we will see the differences between apoptosis and necrosis, and we will learn both of them in detail. So apoptosis can be either physiological or pathological, whereas necrosis is always pathological. So in apoptosis is actually important for the development, homeostasis and elimination of pathogens and tumor cells, whereas necrosis is associated with disruption of the cell homeostasis. So it occurs whenever there is pathological process enters into our body. It can be due to hypoxia or poisoning or ischemia. Whenever some pathology will cause disruption in cellular homeostasis, that results in this necrosis. Then this apoptosis generally affects single group of cells, whereas necrosis affects continuous group of cells. It does not affect one cell, it affects a group of cells. Then in apoptosis the cell size is shrunken, whereas in necrosis the cell size is increased. Apoptosis is an active process, necrosis is a passive process. In apoptosis there is no inflammatory reaction. This is important. Question has been asked many times. In apoptosis there is no inflammatory reaction, whereas if you see in necrosis there is inflammatory reaction is present in necrosis. Then plasma membrane is intact in apoptosis. Plasma membrane is disrupted in necrosis. So plasma membrane intact in apoptosis, disrupted in necrosis. So these are the different things which you have to learn, different differences. Then if you see in the apoptosis, you see a step ladder pattern is seen in apoptosis, whereas in necrosis you see a smear pattern is seen in necrosis. So this is the smear pattern of gel electrophoresis in necrosis. This is the step ladder pattern of apoptosis which you see in gel electrophoresis. Then let us learn about the types of necrosis. Necrosis are divided into mainly 5 types of necrosis which are important. The first type of necrosis is coagulative necrosis. In this, first we will have coagulative necrosis. This coagulative necrosis is actually the most common type of necrosis. The cause of this coagulative necrosis is mainly, most common cause is ischemia, and in this coagulative necrosis it occurs due to the inactivation and denaturation of hydrolytic enzymes. Due to the absence of these hydrolytic enzymes, this coagulative necrosis leads to occurs, and here it is associated with tombstone appearance. It involves all the organisms except brain. In coagulative necrosis, brain is not involved. There is something called as Zenker's degeneration. Zenker's degeneration is actually the coagulative necrosis which occurs in skeletal muscles associated with typhoid. Zenker's degeneration is a coagulative necrosis in skeletal muscles which is associated with typhoid. This Zenker's degeneration is also associated with neutrophilic infiltration also. So this coagulative necrosis is also associated with neutrophilic infiltration. In coagulative necrosis, there is infarct formation also occurs in coagulative necrosis. Then after coagulative necrosis we have liquefactive necrosis. In this, the main difference is in coagulative necrosis hydrolytic enzymes are inactivated, but in liquefactive necrosis these hydrolytic enzymes are activated in liquefactive necrosis. In liquefactive necrosis there is damage of tissue architecture, and because of the damage of tissue architecture there is abscess formation in liquefactive necrosis. Okay, this is most commonly seen in CNS, that is in the brain. It causes CNS ischemia. It occurs in infections and in pancreatitis, and here there is abscess formation is most commonly seen. Then we have the next type of necrosis, which is caseous necrosis. Caseous necrosis is nothing but the combination of liquefactive and coagulative necrosis together. We call it as caseous necrosis. So in the caseous necrosis, it has cheese like material is seen in the caseous necrosis. Here the structural outline is not preserved in the caseous necrosis. The structural outline is not preserved in caseous necrosis. It is most commonly seen in tuberculosis, fungal infection, syphilis. It is most commonly seen in tuberculosis, fungal infection and syphilis. Here there is mainly monophilic and neutrophilic infiltration. See, in coagulative necrosis there is mainly neutrophilic infiltration, whereas in caseous necrosis this is mainly associated with neutrophilic infiltration, right? This caseous necrosis is mainly associated with monocytic or lymphocytic infiltration, whereas this coagulative necrosis is associated with neutrophilic infiltration. Then we have fat necrosis. So in this fat necrosis, here it occurs mainly due to lipases. Okay, this example of this fat necrosis is mainly the pancreatitis. This pancreatitis activates lipases. These lipases will convert lipid to fatty acid, which undergoes saponification, and it forms chalk like yellowish white deposit is seen, and it occurs in pancreatitis. It also occurs whenever there is injury to omentum and breast. Injury to omentum and breast also leads to fat necrosis. Then the final type of necrosis which you see here is fibrinoid necrosis. So what do you see in fibrinoid necrosis? Here there is, in the beginning there is endothelial injury. Okay, and because of this endothelial injury, this leads to the immune complex formation. These immune complexes will damage the proteins in the blood vessel, and thus this results to the deposition of antigen and antibody in the vessel wall. And the examples of this fibrinoid necrosis is malignant hypertension, polyarteritis nodosa, and Ascoff's bodies are formed in this malignant hypertension, in fibrinoid necrosis. In fibrinoid necrosis, examples are malignant hypertension, polyarteritis nodosa, and Ascoff's bodies are formed. Then we have one more type, which is something called as gangrene. So what is this gangrene? Gangrene is the dead tissue. So this gangrene can be of two types. There can be dry gangrene and there can be wet gangrene. So if you see in the dry gangrene, there is mainly coagulative necrosis is seen in dry gangrene. In wet gangrene is associated with liquefactive necrosis. So if you see this dry gangrene examples is ischemia. Ischemia results in coagulative necrosis leading to dry gangrene. Ischemia plus secondary infection causes liquefactive necrosis leading to wet gangrene. There is one more type of gangrene which is called as gas gangrene. In this gas gangrene, it is a type of wet gangrene, and this gas gangrene is associated with Clostridium welchi infection. So this is the main things, main examples, main types of necrosis and their examples. Then we have apoptosis, the process of apoptosis. Apoptosis is also called as programmed cell death. So in apoptosis, you have two types of pathway are seen in apoptosis. In the apoptosis, we have intrinsic pathway and we have extrinsic pathway is seen in apoptosis. So first we will see the intrinsic pathway of apoptosis. So what do you see in intrinsic pathway of apoptosis? So first, in intrinsic pathway, the main important growth factor in intrinsic pathway of apoptosis is BCL2. Okay, the growth factors will normally activate this BCL2 and thus inhibit the permeability of mitochondria. This occurs normally, but in apoptosis there is decreased growth factors. Okay, these decreased growth factors will decrease the activation of BCL2, and as a result BCL2 is replaced by BAX and BX. Because of this, there is increased mitochondrial permeability. Okay, this increased mitochondrial permeability will do two things. One, the cytochrome will come from the mitochondria to the cytoplasm. So there is cytochrome C release from mitochondria to cytoplasm because of increased permeability, and in the cytoplasm there is increased cytochrome C. This cytochrome C will activate caspase 9. Okay, these caspases are of two types. One, we have initiator caspase and executional caspase. This caspase 9 is an initiator caspase. So once this caspase 9 is activated, it is the caspase 9 is initiator caspase of intrinsic pathway. Okay, this caspase 9, once it is activated, it will again activate caspase 3 and caspase 7, which are executioner caspases. These are common executioner caspases for both intrinsic and extrinsic pathway. Okay, this caspase 9 will now activate the protease, and it will activate endonuclease. Protease and endonuclease are the enzymes which digest the protein, that is protease digests proteins, whereas endonuclease digests the DNA or nuclear material. So because of the digestion of protein and the nuclear material, which are the important constituents of the cell, this causes cell death. So what is the earliest change of apoptosis? Earliest change of apoptosis is decrease in cell size, is the earliest change in apoptosis. Then we also have extrinsic pathway. Before that, in the intrinsic pathway there is one more important thing, which is this one. Here there is release of SMAC and DBLO from mitochondria. Because of this release of SMAC and DIABLO from mitochondria, these will combine with neutralized IAPs, and thus these will also activate the intrinsic pathway. Okay, then if you see the extrinsic pathway, in the extrinsic pathway we have two things. One, we have Fas ligand. This Fas ligand will combine with CD95 Fas. Okay, Fas ligand will combine with CD95 Fas, and it forms trimerization of FAD. So there is one more, which is called as TRAIL, combines with DR4 and DR5, and it also causes trimerization of FAD. Whenever there is trimerization of Fas ligand, 1, 2, 3, trimerization, three parts will combine together. This will cause activation of FADD and procaspase 8. Okay, and there is activation of FADD. This FADD will combine with procaspase 8 associated to death domain. Okay, so this is FADD is activated. This FADD will activate the procaspase 8, which is associated to death domain, and as a result this procaspase 8 is activated to caspase 8 or caspase 10 in humans. So this caspase 8 is the main initiator factor of extrinsic pathway. So if you see, initiator factor of intrinsic pathway is 9. It's easier to remember. See, 9 is NINE, right? So you have intrinsic pathway in it. So initiator of intrinsic pathway. Whereas if you see caspase 8 is EIGHT. So E is extrinsic pathway. So here there is initiator caspase for extrinsic pathway is caspase 8. Initiator caspase for intrinsic pathway is caspase 9. Whereas now this caspase 8 and this caspase 8 will now activate caspase 3 and 7, which is the common caspase. Okay, this caspase 3 and 7, now caspase 3 and 7 are also activated, right? Now this caspase 3 and 7 will again activate protease, and it will also activate endonuclease, and thus resulting in cell death. So in both the cases, caspase 3 and caspase 7 are executional caspases, whereas caspase 9 is initiator caspase of intrinsic pathway, whereas caspase 8 is initiator caspase of extrinsic pathway. Then among these two, caspase 3 and caspase 7, if you see, caspase 3 is the most important executioner caspases. Then this endonuclease activation is the hallmark of apoptosis. So this is about apoptosis. Then Then we have regulation of apoptosis. So if you see regulation of apoptosis, we have genes family which is BCL2 family gene on chromosome 18 is actually responsible for apoptosis. So in this apoptosis we have three important things. One, we have anti-apoptotic proteins, pro-apoptotic proteins, and sensors. In anti-apoptotic proteins we have BCL2 gene, BCLXL, MCL1 and sex steroids. In anti-apoptotic genes we have BCL2 gene, BCLXL, MCL1 and sex steroids. So these anti-apoptotic genes are the inhibitors of apoptotic proteins, and this will inhibit the apoptosis. Then we have pro-apoptotic genes. These pro-apoptotic genes include BAX gene, BAC gene, P53 and BCLX. All these will increase the cytochrome C and thus activates the apoptosis. Then we have some sensors. What are the sensors which are present? That are BIM, BID, PUMA and NOXA centers. BIM, BID, PUMA and NOXA centers. These will balance the apoptosis. So they are sensors of apoptosis. Then what are the examples of apoptosis? If you see, there are many examples of apoptosis. So in this, first we have the physiological apoptosis, which is important and which occurs normally in our body. Then we have pathological apoptosis. It can be due to some toxins, infections or any pathological processes occurring in the body. So in the physiological apoptosis, it mainly includes the embryogenesis, menstruation. So in embryogenesis the cell removal is very important. Then in menstruation endometrial cells undergo apoptosis. In viral infected cells and neoplastic cells also get apoptosed by the cytotoxic cells. Then in pathological apoptosis we have Councilman bodies are important in viral hepatitis. Councilman bodies are important in viral hepatitis. We have graft versus host disease. Then gland atrophy showing duct obliteration in cystic fibrosis. Then we have retinitis pigmentosa, which mainly causes apoptosis of rods. Retinitis pigmentosa causes apoptosis of rods. So these are pathological apoptosis. Then what do we do in diagnosis? So if you see for diagnosis, one, we have chromatin condensation due to endonuclease activation. So in diagnosis, the first we have chromatin condensation can be done due to endonuclease activation. This chromatin condensation is mainly seen by hematoxylin stain, Fulgen stain, acridine orange stain. It is mainly seen by hematoxylin, Fulgen and acridine orange stain. Then we have estimation of cytochrome C is important, and we have to estimate activated caspases and estimation of annexin V. Estimation of cytochrome C, activated caspases and annexin V are important in apoptosis. So how do you estimate the annexin V? See, the apoptotic cells will express the phosphatidyl serine which is present on the outer plasma membrane. So this annexin 5 dye will recognize the phosphatidyl serine, okay, and this results in change of the color. So that is how we estimate annexin 5. Then we have one more technique for estimation, which is called as Tunnel's technique. So what is this Tunnel's technique? In this Tunnel's technique, here this Tunnel's technique mainly uses the DUTP, and this DUTP will attach at 3-OH. This DUTP attach at 3-OH and apoptotic cells take up the dye. So as a result, they will be seen as brown color in microscope. They are seen as brown color in microscope, that is light microscope. So if you see, this is tunnel or TDT, terminal deoxynucleotide transferase end labeling mediated DUTP nick. So this is tunnel staining which you see in apoptosis. And you can also do the final technique, which is gel electrophoresis, which has been already shown in the previous picture. This is the tunnel technique which you can see. So these are the brown colored staining, which is tunnel staining, which is seen. Next we have one more concept which is important, which is called as flipping concept. So what is flipping concept? Apoptosis will mainly increase the expression of some molecules. See, there is increased expression of these molecules like phosphate. See, in apoptosis there is increased expression of molecules like phosphatidylserine, C1q, thrombospondin. These are expressed in the apoptosis. Then we also have one more, which is anti-apoptotic. This is about flipping concept. Then if you see, one more important thing is there is an anti-apoptotic gene which is associated with development of resistance to chemotherapy, and that anti-apoptotic gene is called as MCL1, which is an anti-apoptotic gene. It is associated with development of resistance to chemotherapy, right? Then there is one more important thing, which is about traumatic neuronal injury. What happens in traumatic neuronal injury? See, normally how does apoptosis act? As I have already said, in apoptosis caspases play a very important role. Okay, but there are some techniques where caspase does not play an important role. So one of it is this traumatic neuronal injury. In this traumatic neuronal injury, mainly the apoptosis initiator factor is secreted, and this apoptotic initiating factor itself activates the endonucleases, and in this there is no activation of caspase. So this is one important way of apoptosis. Then we have one more important thing about apoptosis is diphenyliodole. So for the detection of apoptosis, we have seen many things which will help to detect apoptosis. This which is diphenyliodole, is also useful for detection, is also useful for the detection of apoptosis. This diphenyliodole is also useful for detection of apoptosis. Then if you see apoptosis, there are some conditions where apoptosis is increased and apoptosis is decreased. So if you see, apoptosis is increased in neurodegenerative conditions. Apoptosis is increased in neurodegenerative disorders and viral infection, whereas apoptosis is decreased in autoimmune disorders. So apoptosis is increased in neurodegenerative disorders and viral infection, and apoptosis is decreased in autoimmune disorders. P53 activates DNA, and this increases apoptosis. P53 is present on chromosome 17p. Then there are some disorders which will look like apoptosis, but they are modifications of apoptosis. Among them we have one which is called as pyroptosis. So what is this pyroptosis? Here the word pyr means fever and optosis is death. So here first we will have infection, and because of this infection there is activation of inflammatory intracellular receptors, which are especially NOD-like receptors are activated. Actually, this NOD-like receptor overactivity will lead to autoinflammatory syndrome. Okay, now this NOD-like receptors are activated, and this leads to the formation of inflammasome. Okay, now this inflammasome will activate caspase 1 and caspase 11. This caspase 1 activates interleukin 1. Now this caspase 1 inflammasome activating caspase 1, which in turn activates interleukin 1, leading to fever, whereas this inflammasome activates caspase 2, and this will lead to cell death. So these are the ways how cell death and fever occurs. But here this occurs through NOD-like receptor, and this is called as pyroptosis. In this pyroptosis there is cell swelling and inflammation present. Remember, in apoptosis there is no inflammation. Inflammation is absent in apoptosis, but in pyroptosis inflammation is present in pyroptosis. This is very important. Inflammation is present in pyroptosis, whereas this inflammation is absent in apoptosis. So this you should take into account. The next modification of apoptosis is called as necroptosis. So what is this necroptosis? It is the combination of necrosis with apoptosis, and this is called as programmed necrosis. Apoptosis is called as programmed cell death, whereas this necroptosis is called as programmed necrosis. So what is happening here? In programmed necrosis, we have tumor necrosis factor will combine with the tumor necrosis factor receptor, and this will activate the receptor associated kinases, These receptor associated kinases will release reactive oxygen species which will cause lysosomal and mitochondrial damage. Once this leads to lysosomal and mitochondrial damage, these will lead to the release of enzymes, and these will also lead to the decreased ATP. Because of the release of enzymes, one, there will be inflammation, second, there will be cell damage, and finally leading to cell death. Okay, this release of enzymes leads to mainly inflammation, cell damage, and cell death. This inflammation is very important here, and this whole process is associated with reactive oxygen species, and it is also associated with tumor necrosis factor. Okay, if you see in this pathway there are no caspases. Because of absence of caspase in this pathway, we call this pathway as caspase independent cell death. Okay, so this is called as caspase independent cell death. Then if you see, this necroptosis is seen in two pathways, two places. One, we have physiological necroptosis and we have pathological necroptosis. This physiological necroptosis is seen in mammalian growth plate, that is mammalian growth plate. For removal of that, we have physiological necroptosis, whereas pathological necroptosis is seen in pancreatitis, then reperfusion injury, steatohepatitis, and Parkinsonism. Pathological necroptosis is seen in pancreatitis, reperfusion injury, steatohepatitis, and Parkinsonism. So this type of necroptosis is also seen in one more organism, which is CMV. So if you see in CMV, this CMV will form a flip protein, and this will inhibit caspases. Once caspase is inhibited, thus apoptosis is avoided, right? So this will avoid apoptosis because of inhibition of caspases. So this CMV, we can't destroy the CMV through apoptosis, right? So how can we destroy this CMV? This CMV can be destroyed by only one pathway, that is necroptosis. Okay, so this is very important. Next we have to see about free radical injury. Okay, this free radical injury, if you see, what do you see in free radical injury? Free radical are those substances which contain those chemicals which contain an unpaired electrons are called as free radicals. So these free radicals are highly reactive, okay, and these lead to the formation of this reaction. So in free radical injury, you have one important thing. See, you have okay, in free radical injury, you have first oxygen in the presence of superoxide ion, it forms hydroxyl ion. This first oxygen in the presence of superoxide ion, it forms H2O2. This H2O2 in the presence of Fenton's reaction, that is Fe+2, that is ferrous to conversion to ferric, in that presence it forms a hydroxyl radical. This hydroxyl radical is most dangerous, and it is the process where the free radical damage occurs. So it is the most dangerous free radical, and it will easily damages the DNA, proteins, and lipids. Okay, so if you see in highly reactive, this oxygen will oxygen will form superoxide ion, due to some insult, this superoxide ion will form H2O2. This H2O2, with the help of this Fenton's reaction, where Fe plus 3 gets converted to Fe plus 2 gets converted to Fe plus 3, and this forms hydroxyl free radical, which is the most dangerous free radical. Okay, this free radical injury, it is most commonly seen in whenever there is radiation, reperfusion injury, or if there is any infection or heavy metal injury is associated with free radical injury. And this free radical injury, here how can we prevent this free radical injury? This is mainly prevented by use of antioxidants. Antioxidants will prevent this free radical injury. So let us now learn about first antioxidants. So what are the antioxidants which inhibit the free radical injury? So we have many antioxidants. Some of them are vitamin A and C, plasma proteins like transferrin, celluloplasmin, and enzymes like superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, catalase. So all these are the antioxidants which are involved in free radical injury. And what does these antioxidants do? These antioxidants will inhibit the process of free radicals formation. So normally whenever free radicals are formed, oxygen gets converted to superoxide ion. This superoxide ion, with the help of this enzyme superoxide dismutase, it forms H2O2. This H2O2 is degraded by catalase, okay, to form water. Thus the this is lost, right? This oxidation, this free radical has been destroyed, whereas this H2O2, in the presence of glutathione peroxidase, which is also an antioxidant, it forms H2O. Okay, this H2O is again harmless. So as a result, these antioxidants will convert the harmful substances to harmless substances. So this is about the complete topic about apoptosis with few other important things. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class we will learn about cell adaptation. Thank you.